PBS English News Service. I'm Supachon Klinsuwan. As you join us this evening, Thai PBS is receiving breaking news of a large firework explosion at Suphanburi's Chinese New Year Festival near the Utthayan Mangkon Sawan in Suphanburi province. The explosion, which is near the provincial shrine, is reported to kill at least 2 people immediately and injured at least another 40 people and damaged a monastery inside a temple. Meanwhile, 30 houses are reported to be on fire, and the radius of the damage from the explosion is around 1 kilometer. And also presiding over the event was Banhan Silapa Acha, who is the chief advisor of the Chhat Thai Patana Party, along with his brother Chumpon Silapa Acha, tourism and sports minister, and also the leader of the Chhat Thai Patana Party, along with a number of executives of the Chhat Thai Patana Party and also bureaucrats in the province. For more of that, we'll report you with more updates in TD Thai PBS, which will be after the Thai PBS English News Service. And now moving on, in the first cabinet meeting since the biggest reshuffle, Yingluck Shinawatra lined up today, the government approved another 15 billion baht budget for flood prevention. Meanwhile, a newly appointed Deputy Prime Minister and ministers take to their offices now. Both the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of the Ministry of Defense and the new Defense Minister himself is declaring that from now on a coup d'etat is a thing of the past. Before heading off for a week-long visit to various countries, Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra chaired the first cabinet meeting with the newly appointed ministers. She emphasized that all ministers must keep their promises made to His Majesty the King. The PM today officially assigned Deputy Prime Minister Yongyut Wichaidit to look after the ministries of Transport, Interior, Social Development and Human Security, and take charge of the Southern Border Provinces Administrative Center, the main unit responsible for handling the Deep South unrest. Deputy Prime Minister Chalom Yubumrung will look after the ministries of Natural Resources, Labor, Justice, and the Royal Thai Police. Meanwhile, Kitirat Naranong, the newly appointed Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, will look after the ministries of Finance, Commerce, Industry, and the Bureau of the Budget. Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister General Yuttasak Sasiprapha, former Minister of Defense, will now oversee the ministries of Defense, Foreign Affairs, ICT, Education, Public Health, Science, Culture, and National Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Council. Meanwhile, Deputy Prime Minister and Sports and Tourism Minister Chumpon Silapa Acha will look after the Sports and Tourism and the Agricultural Ministries. As for the 3 newly appointed ministers attached to the PM's office, PM Yingluck assigned Niwat Thamrong Bunsong Paisan to be responsible for the PM Secretariat Office, the Public Relations Department, and MCOT Public Company Limited, of which the government is a major shareholder. While Warawat Pinyakun will look after the Consumer Protection Department and the National Village Fund and the Bureau of the Budget. Meanwhile, Nalini Tawisin, the Define Minister attached to the PM's office, who is on the U.S.'s visa blacklist, will be looking after the National Economic and Social Development Board and the National Research Center. Meanwhile, another 42 names of advisors and secretariats attached to all ministries was also announced today. Many of the names are seen to having direct links with former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who is one of the most influential figures in the leading Pheu Thai party. As the newly appointed Deputy Prime Ministers and ministers take to their new offices today, both the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of the Ministry of Defense and the new Defense Minister himself declared that from now on, a coup d'etat is a thing of the past. Air Chief Marshal Sukampon Suwanatat, just last week the Transport Minister is now the Minister of Defense. He told the press in front of Armed Forces top brass that Thailand will never again see a coup d'etat occur. Air Chief Marshal Sukampon is a classmate of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. The new minister is seen as the link to make sure the armed forces obey the government's orders. Meanwhile, the newly appointed Transport Minister Jarupong Ringsuwan and his deputy Chachat Sithipan say they will ensure that the government's mega projects will move on, including the 10 SkyTrain lines and the expansion of Suvarnabhumi Airport. But the basic infrastructure devastated by the floods will not be neglected. The new transport minister says the hike in fare prices for buses and boats will not happen anytime soon. There is a joint committee awaiting to be set up. Meanwhile, the new Minister of Industry, Mom Rachawong Phongsawat Sawadiwat, says he will ask the cabinet to set up an insurance fund to assist the industrial sector now that some foreign insurance companies are hiking their premiums, some as much as sixfold. The industry minister says that he will try to allocate a budget to build flood walls surrounding every industrial park before the 2012 floods arrive. ก่อนจากติกาวันนี้ a former finance minister said that the emergency decree covering the debt transfer from the FIDF is theoretically wrong and it is legally questionable as well. Meanwhile, another former minister, Thirachai Puana Naraduban, has written on his Facebook page disagreeing with the government. Today, Thirachai wrote in his Facebook earlier that the Deputy Prime Minister Kitirat informed the cabinet that at the moment it is necessary to solve the problem of the Financial Institution Development Fund, or the FIDF. However, one day before he was discharged, the officials of the Ministry of Finance gave him the details of the Public Debt Management Office, or the PDMO, which stated that this budget rate is at 9.33%, not 12%, as stated by Deputy Prime Minister Kitirat Naranong. The ratio is 1.97% from the capital payment and another 7.36% from the payment of interest. Of this number is calculated from the original legislative number that have been presented to the council earlier. Meanwhile, Gonchaptigat Wanit, another former finance minister from the Democrat Party, disseminated 4 emergency decrees which will allow the government to transfer a massive budget to the Bank of Thailand. He said that it is theoretically wrong that the Ministry of Finance managed this and is wrong. And therefore, the Democrat Party has a resolution to sue the government to the Constitution Court and waiting for the government to show their responsibility as they use their power in the parliament meeting. The government's emergency decree that effectively passes the responsibility for the FIDF's 1.14 trillion baht of debt to the Bank of Thailand, or the BOT, is the subject of much debate. Dr. Rungtip Chotnamhalai today sat down with Associate Professor Pairot Wongwipanon, former Dean of the Faculty of Economics at Chulalongkorn University, to discuss this controversial move. Here's more.
Let's face the fact that, whatever the public debt, you have to face the fact you can't conceal it. You can't put it under the carpet, okay? Because the market now is so globalized, the investors are so clever. They look at not sometimes the legal definition, they look at the actual. You see what I mean? If you want to reduce the debt by 2%, so that let it owned by state mutual fund called Payupak, it's not the proper way to do it. The cost is more than the benefit. It's not worth it.
The CEO of PTT confirmed that the idea of selling the PTT stock will not affect consumers. However, representatives from the Foundation for Consumers are still worried that this company may have too much power as a monopoly and are demanding that the government retain PTT's current status as a state enterprise. Since the government has voiced the possibility that the Wayupak Fund will buy 2% of PTT and Thai Airways stocks to decrease the amount of the public debt and free up funds to develop the country in the future, the chief of the Consumer Protection Center of the Foundation for Consumers believes that such a move will make PTT less transparent. The chief also believes that this is especially true in the case of PTT because now PTT is the only energy monopoly in the country and government officers from the Ministry of Energy administrates the company, ensuring that energy price structures and policies are fair to consumers. They're also requesting that the government should cancel the benefits that PTT receives and to change the law of Petroleum Institute of Thailand if the PTT company is no longer a state enterprise to relieve the problem of pushing the responsibility onto consumers and allowing the competition within the business sector. Phairin Chuchothawon, CEO of PTT, said that PTT conducted research to find both negative and positive views about the reorganization and confirmed that the government will still have an influence on the company's policy and management because the Ministry of Finance would still be the biggest shareholder. Therefore, the company would still be overseen by society and the shareholders, even though they are no longer a state enterprise. Director of the Hydro and Agro-Informatics Institute insists that Thailand and Bangkok in particular will likely face severe flooding again this year. Here's more with Kun Dalin Klong in The Climate.
Dr. Royon Jitdon, director of the Hydro and Agro-Informatics Institute, say that Thailand will face more rain this year than in 2011. The La Niña phenomenon and the Pacific equator will together send massive amounts of moisture from the Pacific Ocean across Thailand. The melting ice from the Arctic will make winds stronger, and Thailand may see more than 5 storms this year. Only this time, not only Bangkok, but the north, northeast and south will all be severely hit during the rainy season, similar to the major floods which hit Thailand in 2006. The director Royon say Bangkok will also see more severe floods as provinces to the north have prepared their dikes and barriers to block water from entering. Therefore, the water will head straight to the lower basin of the Chao Phraya River. Darin Klong Akara reporting for Thai PBS.
Thank you, Kundarin. In a related matter, Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawat's latest policy regarding flood prevention spending says that if government agencies don't start spending within 2 weeks from now, their budget might be revised. Deputy Government Spokesperson Anusorn Iem Saad reveals that the Cabinet Secretariat will be responsible for informing all government agencies concerned with this year's flood prevention scheme to start spending their budget. This effort is to make sure that the projects are completed in time for the floods, which will likely follow the rainy season a few months from now. If these agencies do not start spending, the Cabinet will start revising the budget and re-evaluating which projects need revision. The PM emphasizes that speed is very important, but transparency of spending is also absolutely essential. The big flood prevention budget is worth 120 billion baht divided across both urgent and long-term flood prevention projects. As we mentioned earlier, that there was a massive firework explosion near the Suphanburi's Chinese New Year Festival near Uttayan Mangkon Sawan. More updates are coming up, of course, in the Thai language with Kun Natha Gomanuatin right after this. And that wraps up tonight's edition of Thai PBS English News Service. Thank you all so much for watching us tonight. I'm Supachon Klin Suwan. Sawadee krap.